The mother and her 3-year-old son who were viciously attacked in a grocery store parking lot in the middle of the day. The boy didn't survive his devastating stab wounds. Police say they caught the alleged killer just minutes later with the knife still in her hand.
The woman charged with stabbing to death a little boy in North Olmsted had run-ins with police across the country in recent months, according to police reports. One of those reports out of Bakersfield, California, showed that Bionca Ellis assaulted security guards and staff at a hospital when she refused to leave after being discharged. In another case out of Florida, Bionca Ellis is accused of trespassing at a hotel. Reports show that she wanted to rent a room but didn't have money, and she was asked to leave. In both of those cases, she told police that she wanted to go to jail.
The judge's voice trembled as she prepared to sentence the woman who murdered a 3-year-old boy in a grocery store parking lot. The defendant, who had shown no emotion throughout her entire trial, suddenly began to cry. But was she crying for her victim or for herself? What happened next in that courtroom will leave you stunned.
With respect to sentencing, so I have some comments that I'd like to make. I think it's fair for all of you to understand, just as the lawyers have pointed out, there are certain guidelines I follow as a judge. And some of those things that are said are mitigating. Others I take into consideration, just like any other of my fellow 33 judges here on the bench. Sometimes the word is desire and demand. Those are not in the revised code section 292911 or 292912. I don't say that to minimize any of the comments that were made, but I do take in everything, right? So I don't come up here on the bench without some idea of what the court may use as the tools under the revised code section to move forward with sentencing. And so I'll say to the Woods family, nothing I say here will ever capture the enormity of your loss. This court recognizes that your lives were forever changed on June 3rd of 2024. Please know that I'm painfully aware of Julian's void in your lives.
This is the sentencing of Bionca Ellis. I need to warn you, this case will break your heart. Before we dive in, I need you to understand something. This isn't just another true crime story. This is about a little boy named Julian Wood, who was only 3 years old when his life was stolen from him. This is about a mother who fought desperately to save her child. And this is about a community demanding answers to an impossible question. How do you make sense of senseless evil? What you're about to hear is the actual sentencing hearing, word for word from the court transcript. The judge's powerful statement, the family's unimaginable pain, and a sentence that ensures Bionca Ellis will never walk free again. If you want to stay informed about cases like this and understand how our justice system works, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Now let's get into it. June 3rd, 2024. It was just a regular Monday afternoon in North Olmsted, Ohio. Margot Wood had taken her 3-year-old son Julian to Giant Eagle, a routine grocery store trip that millions of parents make every single day. She finished shopping, walked out to the parking lot, and began loading groceries into her car. Julian was with her, probably excited about whatever little treat Mom had let him pick out. Maybe he was talking about his favorite cartoon. Maybe he was singing a song he'd learned. Just normal toddler things. But what Margot didn't know, what she had no way of knowing, was that someone had been watching them, following them. Surveillance cameras inside the store captured something that would later send chills down everyone's spine. Bionca Ellis, 32 years old, deliberately tracking this mother and child through the aisles. She wasn't shopping, she wasn't browsing, she was hunting. Ellis followed them to the checkout. She followed them outside. And in the parking lot, in broad daylight, she did the unthinkable. Without warning, without provocation, without saying a single word, Bionca Ellis pulled out a knife and attacked Julian Wood. This wasn't a momentary loss of control. This was sustained, deliberate violence against a defenseless 3-year-old child. Margot immediately fought back, trying desperately to protect her son. She was stabbed multiple times in the process. Witnesses in the parking lot watched in horror. Multiple people called 911. Some tried to intervene, but Julian's injuries were catastrophic. He was rushed to the hospital where doctors fought to save his life, but it was too late. Little Julian Wood died from his wounds. a routine trip to the grocery store had ended in every parent's worst nightmare. Bionca Ellis didn't run. She didn't try to escape. She was apprehended right there at the scene, and when police took her into custody, she showed absolutely no remorse. As investigators pieced together what happened, they discovered something that made the crime even more disturbing. There was no connection whatsoever between Ellis and the Wood family. They had never met. There was no prior relationship, no argument, no motive that made any rational sense. Ellis had a documented history of mental health issues, including schizophrenia. She'd had previous encounters with law enforcement, but nothing could explain or excuse what she'd done. The surveillance footage was damning. You could see Ellis inside the store, fixated on this mother and child. She passed by other shoppers, other children. But once she locked onto Julian Wood, she never stopped following. This was targeted. This was intentional. And it was captured on camera. The North Olmsted community was devastated. Vigils were held for Julian. Flowers and teddy bears piled up at a memorial. Strangers who had never met the Wood family wept for them because this tragedy represented every parent's deepest fear, that you can do everything right and still lose your child to random violence. Bionca Ellis was charged with aggravated murder, multiple counts of murder, attempted murder for the attack on Margot Wood, felonious assault, endangering children, and other charges. The trial was emotionally devastating for everyone involved. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: surveillance footage, witness testimony, forensic evidence, medical examiner reports. There was no question about what happened or who did it. The defense didn't dispute the facts. Instead, they focused on Ellis's mental health, arguing that her schizophrenia affected her understanding of right and wrong. But here's the critical legal question the jury had to answer. Did Bionca Ellis understand that what she was doing was wrong when she stabbed Julian Wood? Mental health experts testified. The jury heard about Ellis's psychiatric history. They heard about her struggles with schizophrenia, but they also heard evidence that Ellis knew exactly what she was doing. The surveillance footage showed calculated behavior. She followed them. She waited. She attacked when Margot's attention was on loading groceries. After deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict: guilty. Guilty on all counts, including aggravated murder. The jury had determined that yes, while Bionca Ellis suffered from schizophrenia, she understood the nature and wrongfulness of her actions when she murdered Julian Wood. Now came the moment everyone had been waiting for: sentencing. The courtroom was packed on Monday morning. Judge Nancy Russo presided over the hearing. Julian's family was there. Ellis's family was there. The community was there, seeking some measure of justice for a senseless tragedy. Before the sentence was announced, family members were given the opportunity to deliver victim impact statements. This is where families can speak directly about their loss, about who their loved one was, about the permanent damage the crime has caused. Multiple members of Julian's family spoke. They described a bright, energetic little boy who loved life. They talked about the hole his death has left, the birthdays he'll never celebrate, the first day of school that will never come, the man he'll never grow up to be. Margot Wood, who survived her own stab wounds while trying to save her son, had to stand in that courtroom and speak about Julian. Imagine the strength that takes. Imagine having to face your child's killer and put into words a loss that has no words. The family's pain filled that courtroom. These weren't just statements, they were the anguished cries of people whose lives have been shattered forever. And then something happened that caught everyone's attention. Bionca Ellis began to cry. Throughout the investigation, the arrest, the entire trial, Ellis had shown virtually no emotion. But now, facing the family she'd destroyed and the consequences of her actions, she cried. Was it remorse? Was it self-pity? We can't know what was in her heart. But the tears came as Judge Russo prepared to speak. What Judge Russo said next was powerful, compassionate, and unflinching. Let me take you through her actual words because they matter.
To the Woods family, nothing I say here will ever capture the enormity of your loss. This court recognizes that your lives were forever changed on June 3rd of 2024. No sentence I impose today will make you or your family whole again. And you know that.
Think about that. A judge acknowledging the fundamental limitation of the justice system, that nothing she does can bring Julian back.
I do want you to know that I acknowledge your courage, your hopes, and today my hope is that this brings some measure of closure for you to continue to move on in your lives. Please know that I'm painfully aware of Julian's void in your lives. Justice cannot undo tragedy, but it can affirm that what happened was wrong and that your child's life mattered. To the Ellis family, you've been here the whole time as well. This process has been painful for all of you. While my sentence must reflect the severity of the crime, I do not ignore that your family too are experiencing loss. This is what true justice looks like, acknowledging the humanity in everyone while still holding people accountable. Miss Ellis, the jury of your peers has spoken. They have found that although we all have agreed that you suffer from schizophrenia, you did understand the nature and wrongfulness of your actions. The power of the American jury system is that it reflects the values of the community that they represent. And I accept the finding of your peers. I rewatched every video in preparation for this sentencing. And I find that it's clear in that evidence that you are fixated on the very first child that you cross paths with that tragic day. You chose to end the life of Julian Wood, a life that was filled with limitless promises. Your choice has inflicted immeasurable pain on the Wood family, on your own family, and on the community in which we all live.
Let that sink in. The judge watched all the surveillance footage again, and what she saw was Ellis fixating on the very first child she encountered. Julian Wood was targeted simply because he was there.
Mental illness does not excuse what you did. I hope that you use this time to confront the harsh reality of the actions that you've created. No sentence that I hand down today can undo the pain that you cause, but justice requires that your actions have consequences.
But then Judge Russo did something remarkable. She paused from the sentencing to address a larger issue, one that affects all of us.
This tragedy did not occur in isolation. As a society that cares for the members of the community, we cannot continue to ignore the glaring gap in our county's mental health support system.
The judge pointed out that this trial started during Mental Illness Awareness Week. Medical experts testified on October 10th, World Mental Health Day. The irony wasn't lost on anyone.
I urgently implore our city and county leaders to continue providing facilities and programs that respond quickly and compassionately to those in crisis. The need is dire now than far too many of us realize. The leaders in this county have been discussing this topic for far too long. Please get it done.
Then she said something that should make all of us stop and think.
No family should have to lose a child, and no family should have to watch their loved ones deteriorate because meaningful and effective mental health services were unavailable. The absence of adequate and functioning mental health facilities in our community has tragic consequences. I call upon our leaders at every level of government to make providing and supporting mental health care a true priority so that others in crisis can be helped before another tragedy occurs. This is a judge using her platform to demand change, to point out that while Ellis must be held accountable, our system failed to prevent this tragedy in the first place.
Then came the moment everyone was waiting for.
Judge Russo methodically went through each count, explaining the legal framework she was required to follow. She outlined the sentencing guidelines, the factors she had to consider, the maximum penalties available. And then she announced her decision. On multiple counts of murder, life with parole eligibility at 15 years, the maximum. On attempted murder, 11 to 16.5 years, the maximum. On felonious assault charges, 8 years each, the maximum. On endangering children, 8 years, the maximum. And then the big one. Regarding aggravated murder and finding the defendant guilty of aggravated murder by this jury, the court's going to hand down a sentence of life without parole. Life without parole.
Bionca Ellis, at 32 years old, will never be free again. All other sentences would run concurrent to this life sentence. She would get credit for the 509 days she'd already served in jail awaiting trial, but that was meaningless compared to the rest of her natural life behind bars.
I'll order you in the custody of the sheriff to transport you to Marysville Correctional Facility, Judge Russo concluded.
As is her constitutional right, Ellis's attorney immediately filed notice of appeal. Judge Russo appointed the public defender to represent Ellis in that appeal, noting that Ellis couldn't afford private counsel. But here's the reality. Appeals in cases with evidence this overwhelming rarely succeed. The surveillance footage, the witness testimony, the forensic evidence, it's all ironclad. Ellis received a fair trial. The jury was properly instructed. The verdict was supported by evidence. The appeal is a formality, a constitutional protection that ensures even those convicted of the most heinous crimes have their rights protected. But it's unlikely to change the outcome. Bionca Ellis will die in prison. So what do we take away from all of this? First, justice was served. The system worked. Ellis was caught, prosecuted, convicted, and sentenced to the harshest penalty available. She will never have the opportunity to hurt another child. But justice doesn't bring Julian Wood back. It doesn't heal Margot Wood's trauma. It doesn't fill the void in that family's life. Justice is the best we can do in an impossible situation, but it has limits. Second, Judge Russo was right to highlight the mental health crisis in our communities. Yes, Bionca Ellis is responsible for her actions. Yes, she understood what she was doing was wrong. But could this tragedy have been prevented if she had received better mental health care earlier? If the system had intervened more effectively during her previous encounters with law enforcement? We'll never know. But we owe it to future victims to ask these questions and demand better. Third, this case reminds us that random violence can happen to anyone. The Wood family did nothing wrong. They were in a public place, in broad daylight, and they still became victims. That's terrifying, but it's the reality we live in. We can't live in fear, but we can be aware. If you see someone behaving strangely or threateningly in public, trust your instincts. If you or someone you know is in mental health crisis, seek help immediately. Our safety depends on all of us looking out for each other. Most importantly, we need to remember Julian Wood, not just as a victim, but as a person. He was 3 years old. He had his whole life ahead of him. First days of school, learning to ride a bike, making friends, growing up, maybe playing sports or learning an instrument, going to prom, graduating, maybe having his own family someday. All of that was stolen from him on June 3, 2024, in a grocery store parking lot. His family will carry that loss forever. Every milestone he should have reached, every holiday without him, every time they see a child his age and think about who Julian would be now. That's the real tragedy here. Not just a life ended, but all the life that should have been lived. Judge Russo said it perfectly. Justice cannot undo tragedy, but it can affirm that what happened was wrong, and that your child's life mattered. Julian Wood's life mattered. He was loved, he is missed, and he will never be forgotten. Cases like this test our faith in humanity. They make us question how someone could do something so evil to an innocent child. They make us afraid of the world we live in. But they also show us something important. Communities come together in tragedy. Strangers support each other. The justice system, for all its flaws, can hold people accountable. And families, even in unimaginable grief, find the strength to continue living. Margot Wood survived the attack that killed her son. She had to testify at trial. She had to relive the worst moment of her life in front of strangers. She had to face her son's killer in court, and she did it. That takes courage we can barely comprehend. The Wood family asked for justice. They got it. Now they face the impossible task of learning to live with a loss that can never be filled. If you're watching this and you're a parent, hold your children a little tighter tonight. Tell them you love them. Be grateful for the ordinary moments, the grocery store trips, the bedtime routines, the everyday chaos of family life. Because for the Wood family, those ordinary moments with Julian are now precious memories they can never make again. Rest in peace, Julian Wood. You deserved so much more than what happened to you. Your life was short, but you were loved deeply, and you will never be forgotten. Thank you for watching this difficult but important case. If you found this coverage informative and respectful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more criminal justice content. If you have thoughts on mental health reform, victims' rights, or this case in general, share them respectfully in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation focused on preventing future tragedies and supporting victims' families. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves and each other.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. It really helps our channel grow. And hey, we've got plenty more videos waiting for you. Check them out right here so you can stay updated with all our latest content. See you in the next one.